The cold metal walls of the Galactic Academy's training hall echoed with the clanging of weapons, the sounds of battle lingering in the air like an unspoken challenge. Selene Kael stood at the edge of the room, her back straight and her eyes fixed on the sparring floor, watching the other students with detached focus. She didn't need to look away, her senses were sharper than most, and every movement around her was processed, analyzed, calculated. The constant chaos of the room didn't bother her. It was just noise. She had learned to ignore it long ago. Her dark eyes flickered briefly to the group of Illexians gathered at the far corner of the hall, their bright green skin and towering frames impossible to miss. They were watching her, as they always did. Vorex Illex, their leader, leaned against the wall with an air of smug superiority, flanked by his gang of bullies. His eyes locked onto hers for a moment, a silent challenge in his gaze. He was used to breaking things, humans especially. The sight of her, the solitary earthling, irked him, and Selene could feel his disdain seeping into the atmosphere around her. She stood her ground. "Is that your idea of a fight?" Vorex sneered, his voice carrying across the room. He was talking to one of his underlings, but his eyes never left Selene. Pathetic. It's almost as if the humans are begging to be exterminated. The jab was casual, like a passing comment, but Selene knew exactly what he was doing. Vorex was testing her. He wanted a reaction. He wanted to see if she would flinch, speak, or, God forbid, fight him. Selene remained still. Her jaw tightened, but she didn't move. Her fists, clenched at her sides, remained hidden beneath the folds of her combat jacket. The Earth was a death world, and she had learned from birth to endure. She wasn't about to give him the satisfaction of breaking her silence. The air in the room shifted as the training session ended. The students dispersed, and Vorex's crew began to approach. He walked toward her slowly, his footfalls deliberate. He was enjoying this moment of power. "You know," he said, his voice low and filled with mock sympathy, "I've seen plenty of human warriors. They all have one thing in common. They like to talk about how strong they are." He stopped just a few paces from her, looking down at her with a smirk that curled his lips. "You, on the other hand, are nothing but a disappointment." Selene's heart rate didn't increase. Her palms didn't sweat. The silence she had crafted was impenetrable. She had learned long ago that words were a weapon, and silence was a shield. It was easier to break someone when they were talking, when they were reacting. But she would not give him that power. Vorex's grin faltered, but only slightly. He expected her to say something, anything. He expected to see fear, hesitation, or perhaps anger. Instead, there was only calm, the calm that made him question whether he had misjudged her. "Does it hurt, Earthling?" Vorex's tone turned icy, the mockery in his voice sharpening with every word. "To be so small, so insignificant in this galaxy? Do you think your silence makes you powerful?" His hand shot out, gripping her shoulder with unnatural strength, pulling her closer. His breath was hot on her ear, and for the first time, she felt the intensity of his malice. "You will regret ever stepping foot on this station." Selene felt the pressure of his grip, but there was no panic in her chest, no heat in her veins. She had been in situations far worse than this. The Illexians were strong, yes. But they had no understanding of her kind. She had faced the predators of Earth, things that made them look like children playing at war. They had no idea what it meant to survive on her planet. Vorex's eyes narrowed as he realized she wasn't responding. He gave her a shove, hard enough to send her stumbling back, but Selene righted herself without missing a beat. She didn't flinch. She didn't gasp. She simply stood and stared, her expression unreadable. "Enough games," Vorex finally growled. "I'm not here for this. We're going to put you in your place. I'll teach you just how weak humans really are." Selene met his gaze, her lips barely twitching in a faint smile. "I don't need to play your games, Illexian." Her voice was soft but cutting, the words dripping with cold finality. She had given him nothing to feed on, no cracks in her facade. Vorex took a step back, his hands clenching into fists, frustration boiling beneath his skin. "I'm done waiting for you to break," he spat. "We'll settle this in the arena. There's a test coming up. You think you can handle it?" "I doubt it. But if you want to prove your worth, I'll be waiting. Let's see how long your silence lasts when you're fighting for your life." With that, Vorex turned and walked away, his gang trailing behind him like shadows, muttering amongst themselves. Selene's eyes followed them for a moment, her mind already calculating the coming battle. The arena. The ultimate test. It wasn't the first time she had been pushed into one of these spectacles of survival, and it certainly wouldn't be the last. But this time, she would be ready. She could feel the weight of Vorex's words hanging in the air, like a silent promise, but it didn't concern her. The arena wasn't where she would find her answer. No, her answer would come long before she ever stepped into that ring. It would come the moment she chose to let silence do the talking. The room had cleared out, but Selene remained standing. She was alone, save for the hum of the station's ventilation system, and in that quiet, she made her decision. Vorex wanted a challenge? She'd give him one. But not the one he was expecting. Her silence wasn't weakness. It was her weapon. And she would use it to dismantle him, piece by piece, until nothing was left but the shattered image of the Illexian bully. And this time, there would be no room for doubt. The hum of the station's ventilation system echoed in Selene's ears as she stepped into the sparring room. She was alone, her dark eyes scanning the room with surgical precision. This space was meant for practice, but to her, it had always been more than that. It was a sanctuary, a place where the noise of the galaxy faded, and she could focus on the one thing that mattered: survival. The arena, where the final test would take place, loomed in her mind like a distant thunderstorm. The thought of it should have made her anxious, should have lit a fire in her chest. But instead, she felt an eerie calm. Vorex thought he could break her. He thought he could make her scream, beg, or lose control. But Selene Kael had no intention of giving him the satisfaction. Her training session was relentless, each strike of her blade cutting through the air with a sharpness that mirrored her thoughts. She didn't need to waste time on anger. Her plan was already taking shape. Every movement, every breath, was about precision. She had faced far worse on Earth, in the jungles, the deserts, the wilds of her homeworld. She knew how to endure. Vorex didn't understand that. He didn't understand humanity's gift for resilience, the ability to take the blows and stand up again, even when the world wanted to break you. As she finished her workout, her wrist communicator buzzed with an incoming message. The sharp sound broke her concentration, but she didn't flinch. She knew exactly who it was. Vorex Illex, the final test is scheduled. The arena. It's time. Show me what you're made of, human. Selene stared at the message for a moment, letting the weight of his words settle. Then, without responding, she turned and left the training room, heading for the locker area. She wasn't here for games, for banter. She was here to survive. Hours later, Selene stood at the entrance to the arena. It was a circular chamber, the high ceiling illuminated by harsh lights that created long shadows on the floor. The spectators' seats circled the area, stretching high into the walls like a vast, empty coliseum. The hum of excitement was palpable, but to Selene, it sounded distant, like a faint echo from another world. She was focused. Her nerves were a perfect storm of calm, ready to erupt. She was alone in her preparation, her body still from the inside out, while her mind worked. There were no last-minute plans, no rushed thoughts. She knew Vorex would come at her with everything he had, both strength and arrogance. He wanted her to fight him head-on, to prove she was weak enough to be beaten. But that was exactly what he expected. And Selene never gave people what they expected. A soft click from the arena's entrance announced Vorex's arrival. His towering form stepped into the space, his usual swagger accompanying every step. He was dressed in the ceremonial combat armor of his people, gleaming plates of metal that gleamed under the harsh lights. He raised his chin, surveying the arena as if he were the ruler of this world. "You should be thanking me, human," Vorex called out, his voice booming. I'm giving you a chance to die with some dignity. But then again, I doubt you know what that is. Selene didn't look at him. She didn't need to. She could feel the weight of his gaze as it roamed over her, sizing her up. The silence between them stretched out, thick and heavy, as the crowd began to murmur. The anticipation in the air was nearly tangible, but Selene didn't waver. You've been nothing but a nuisance, Kael, Vorex continued, now circling her slowly. You've survived every insult, every challenge I've thrown at you. But this time, there will be no escape. This arena will be your grave. He lunged forward, faster than Selene had expected. She spun to the side, narrowly avoiding the blow as his fist collided with the ground where she had been standing moments earlier. The impact sent a shockwave through the floor, vibrating through her boots. Not bad, Selene said quietly, her voice barely audible over the noise of the crowd. She didn't offer him the satisfaction of fear. There was no panic, no hesitation. She was just waiting. Vorex growled in frustration. Why do you keep pretending, huh? I know you're scared, human. I know it. That silence? It's just a mask. But you'll break soon enough. His voice was dripping with malice, his next attack coming even faster than the first. This time, Selene anticipated it. She sidestepped again, but instead of running, she used his momentum against him. As Vorex's massive frame sped past her, she shifted and struck, her knee connecting with the back of his leg. He staggered, but it wasn't enough to bring him down. That's what you think, she said calmly, her breath steady as ever. Vorex stumbled back, fury clouding his eyes. The crowd's shouts rang in Selene's ears, but she tuned them out, focusing solely on the space around her. Every move Vorex made, every strike he threw, was predictable. His arrogance was his weakness. His pride was the fuel she needed. Enough of this, Vorex snarled. With a roar, he charged her, his speed a blur as he slammed into her with the force of a starship crashing into the atmosphere. The impact sent her flying, but she twisted mid-air, using the momentum to roll and land on her feet. Her heart thudded once, then settled into its usual rhythm. She wasn't hurt. Not yet. Vorex lunged again, this time with the blade of his species, a long, jagged weapon that gleamed with malice. He swung it with deadly precision, aiming for Selene's neck. In one fluid motion, she dodged, ducked under his swing, and slid behind him. As he turned to face her, she grabbed his arm, twisting it and using his own force to throw him to the ground. Selene was quick, her body moving with the precision of a predator. She didn't waste time on overconfidence. She had a job to do. Why do you keep getting up? Vorex panted, struggling to get to his feet. Because I'm human, Selene answered, her voice colder than ice. And humans don't stay down. Not when it matters. The silence between them felt heavier now. The weight of Vorex's arrogance had shifted, replaced with uncertainty. He was beginning to realize that this fight wasn't going to play out the way he expected. And Selene, with her calm resolve and unbroken silence, was about to show him just how wrong he was. The arena was silent now. The once roaring crowd had fallen into a tense, expectant hush, their eyes locked onto the battlefield. The soft hum of the station systems and the distant echo of footsteps were the only sounds in the vast chamber. In the center, Vorex Illex lay on the cold, metallic floor, his breathing labored, his face twisted in disbelief. Selene stood across from him, her posture unchanged. Her expression was still, a quiet mask of calm that only further unsettled him. The air between them crackled with tension. His massive frame was sprawled on the ground, the Illexian armor slightly scratched, his eyes wide in shock. She had done it, she had beaten him without raising her voice, without giving him the satisfaction of a fight he could control. Vorex's body trembled as he slowly pushed himself up, his hands shaking. He wasn't sure what to make of her. She had survived his onslaughts, effortlessly avoiding his strikes, and then, he remembered, she had thrown him to the ground with a single, calculated move. What are you? Vorex finally growled, his voice rough. The question hung in the air, thick with the venom of frustration. How did you survive this? I was supposed to crush you. Selene didn't answer. Her eyes were fixed on him with unwavering focus. She didn't need to speak, her silence was her weapon. The Illexian was stunned by the realization. He had been certain that he would break her, that she would lash out in anger or fear, that he could defeat her with his sheer power and arrogance. But this was different. He had underestimated her. Why won't you fight me properly? Vorex spat, his tone filled with both rage and confusion. Is this all you humans are? Silent little pests who get by on cheap tricks. A flicker of emotion crossed Selene's face, barely noticeable, but it was there. Pity. He had spent so much time focusing on his own strength that he hadn't bothered to understand what he was facing. Your strength is nothing compared to the endurance of my kind, she finally spoke, her voice cold and controlled. You rely on brute force, but force doesn't win wars. It's the mind that prevails. And you, she paused, stepping closer, you are too predictable. Vorex's eyes narrowed. He stood up fully, shaking off the debris from his armor. His pride stung more than the bruises. He had thought himself invincible, the apex predator. Yet, in the face of this human, he had been shown just how fragile his arrogance was. Is that it then? He spat, trying to recover his composure. You think you've won because you played your tricks? It's not over, human. Isn't it? Selene's words cut through the tension, each syllable precise. She didn't move as Vorex took a step toward her. The crowd was still watching, their collective breath held in anticipation. The silence that enveloped her was profound, deeper than any sound could have been. Vorex rushed at her, his blade raised high, the jagged edges gleaming under the lights. But Selene was already prepared. She moved with fluid precision, sidestepping his attack and positioning herself behind him in a single, seamless motion. In an instant, her hands were on his arm, twisting it just enough to break his stance. Before he could react, she drove her knee into the small of his back, sending him crashing to the floor once again. Enough, she said, her voice carrying across the arena. It wasn't a plea. It was a command. Vorex struggled beneath her grip, his body heaving with the effort to break free. But Selene was unyielding, her grip like iron. She had him at her mercy, but she didn't show it. She wasn't here to prove dominance. She wasn't here for revenge in the way he thought. The silence between them grew heavier, suffocating. Vorex's defiance wavered as he realized he was no longer in control of the situation. He had underestimated her in every possible way. The very thing he thought was weakness, the silence, had been her greatest strength. You wanted to break me, Selene said, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. You thought your strength could overpower me. But you failed because you don't understand what strength really is. Vorex's hand twitched, reaching for his blade, but he had no strength left to fight her. His body was battered, his pride shattered, and the humiliation was eating away at him. She had stripped him of his power without raising her voice. That was a kind of victory he could never fathom. Humans, he growled, the word like a curse in his mouth. Always so resilient. You'll never truly belong here. Not in this galaxy. You're nothing but a blight on it. Selene's grip tightened for a moment, her jaw clenched in quiet resolve. Her eyes met his, unflinching. You don't get to decide that, she replied softly. I do. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The silence stretched between them like an invisible wall. The crowd, once eager for bloodshed, was now eerily still. They had expected to see a human fall. Instead, they had witnessed a humiliation unlike any they had seen before. A human had bested one of their strongest warriors with nothing more than willpower and silence. Vorex's breaths came in ragged gasps. His pride was shattered, and for the first time, he felt the weight of his own vulnerability. There was no one to help him now, no one to rescue his honor. He was broken. Leave, Selene commanded. The word was simple, final. No threats, no anger, just quiet certainty. You don't belong here anymore. The Illexian leader remained on the ground for a moment longer, his chest rising and falling with each labored breath. His pride and his strength had been tested and found wanting. Slowly, almost grudgingly, he rose to his feet, the realization of defeat settling in like a lead weight. With a final glance at Selene, he turned and staggered toward the edge of the arena, his defeat leaving a bitter taste in his mouth. His followers hesitated for a moment before reluctantly following him, casting one last look at the human who had brought their leader to his knees. Selene stood motionless, watching them go, her gaze unwavering. She had won, not with strength, not with force, but with the quiet power that only humans seem to possess. They had the capacity to endure, to stand firm in the face of overwhelming odds, and to rise again, no matter how many times they were knocked down. As the arena's doors closed behind the defeated Illexians, the silence in the chamber shifted. The spectators, once jeering and mocking, now watched in stunned silence. They had witnessed the impossible. And they would remember it. Selene didn't look back. She had made her point. And in the quiet aftermath, she walked from the arena, her head held high, her silence more powerful than any words ever could have been.